This thing's been sitting for 4 weeks, I think. So we're gonna see if it'll crank up.
It's been 4 long weeks, and now Big Red is about to roar back to life. I'm Sage, here to walk alongside Brad and fill you in on the story behind the wrench turns. That's what we like to see. Sitting for 4 weeks, and she still comes to life like nothing happened. Good sign the basics are solid. Before we dive into today's troubleshooting, let's catch everyone up on what we've knocked out since dragging Big Red home. We started with the basics, giving the truck a solid electrical foundation. That meant refreshing grounds, upgrading a few connections, and swapping in a new fender-mounted starter solenoid. We also added a high-torque gear reduction starter to make those cold starts a whole lot easier. On the fuel side, we ran a new injector return line kit, replaced a couple of tire hoses, and after some priming, the old diesel came back to life. The brakes were completely out when we started. A new rear wheel cylinder and fresh front rubber lines got us back in business. In the last episode, we tackled the TPS sensor. Today, Brad wants to troubleshooting the tachometer and alternator, then double-check the TPS readings and make sure they're in spec.
So I want to get some measurements on the TPS sensor. I have a needle poked into the green wire and grounded the battery. I should have done this before I swapped it. Let's see. So we're getting 1.4 volts at idle. And then we go all the way up to max 4 volts.
It should be about 1 volt up to about 4.5 volts. So your 1.4 to 4.0 range is a little short on both ends, but it's close enough to run.
I just thought about it. I can just plug the old sensor in. So let's see, this little bar would be around a little bit, potentially around there. And then when we max this thing out, well, that's got a pretty smooth range of operation. Oop, there goes erratic, which is why we swapped the sensor. I do think the sensor is bad for sure. And we max out at 4.7. That's not that far off. Maybe we'll be all right. And we're ready to move on to the tachometer. And I need to check this wiring loom, which has already got a bunch of damage on it. Maybe we just got bad conductors. But I think I'm supposed to test resistance. But I need to know if I'm going from each conductor to ground or between the two.
The tach on these old IDI diesels works off a magnetic pickup on the front of the engine. Testing it is simple. First, unplug the sensor and check resistance across the 2 pins. You should see continuity, but not a dead short. Look at that. That frayed wiring right there's a red flag. Before we blame the sensor, we should repair that section. Damaged wires can kill the signal before it ever reaches the tachometer.
It's chewed up. Pretty bad. What size is that thing?
Your 7.3 should take a 1-inch.
1 inch. Tight. Well, not much to this thing, is it? Let's go inspect the wiring loom. Take a look at this thing. See bare conductors. See if I can maybe get a reading from there. So I'm going to say I'll just cut it off right here, strip it back, and see if we get a good reading. Apparently this sends an AC signal, so polarity doesn't really matter.
Exactly. This is a variable reluctance sensor, basically a little magnet wrapped in a coil of wire. As the teeth on the crankshaft's trigger wheel pass by, the magnetic field gets disturbed and the coil generates an alternating current. The faster it goes, The higher the frequency and the stronger the signal. That's why when you rev the engine, the AC voltage climbs. The tachometer just reads that AC pulse and translates it into engine RPM. Because it's alternating current, there's no positive or negative lead. Either way you connect it, it works the same.
Can you explain what the measurements are supposed to be?
Usually a few hundred ohms, typical range between 200 and 500 ohms.
Because I got to open.
If the meter shows open or infinite resistance, we should suspect the coil is broken and the sensor's dead.
But what we know for sure is this has to be repaired, so this was a no-loss attempt here. Don't have much wire to work with, but I'm going to splice in a new piece of wire, and then we'll go give it a try. And we'll actually check AC while I'm cranking. Look at this. I can do that one-handed, so just gonna plug that up and go fire it up and see if it works, and then we'll hook the meter to it and see if we get any AC out of it. Well, I did the first start yesterday following a 4-week work trip. So it's been almost 24 hours. I think it's gonna start. We'll give it some glow plug and we'll go for it. Got no tachometer. When I drove it, I remember when I got up to like 2,000 it would work. I should probably let it run for a second. Been running a second now. Whenever I go up like about 2,000 or so, it starts working. Kind of thinking maybe a bad sensor really is what the problem is. That's the next thing to figure out while we're not charging. Alright, last thing we're going to check AC voltage. I went and borrowed some pin needles from the wife. We're going to fire it up and see what we got. Well, we got AC, so I don't know, maybe the sensor's okay.
Not quite. A tiny signal like 17 millivolts isn't enough to drive the tach. At idle, we should expect a few hundred millivolts, sometimes 300 to 400. Try taking it back off and cleaning it to see if there is any improvement.
So take it back off and clean it. All right, let's do that. O-ring looks okay to me, but I'll give it a good cleaning. Well, all right, got it cleaned up a little bit. Just curious if we get a higher voltage with it disconnected, and then when I connect it, maybe the voltage drops, and that might lead to something down the line.
That's actually a good way to test it. With the sensor unplugged from the harness, you're measuring its raw output straight at the pins. That way you know exactly what the sensor is producing without any interference from wiring or the cluster.
We are connected, the sensor is disconnected, so we'll fire it up. Wait a minute, we're on almost actually higher this time.
Good. That's more like what we'd expect. A couple hundred millivolts at idle shows the sensor is generating a usable signal. Now the question is, does it climb when you rev the engine? Perfect. That tells us the sensor is doing its job. It's generating a strong enough AC signal that your meter maxed out on that scale. That's actually a good sign. Go ahead and plug it back in and let's see what happens. See that drop? Unplugged. The sensor makes a solid signal, almost 300 millivolts at idle, over a volt when revved. But as soon as it's tied into the harness, it falls to about 20 millivolts. That points to two likely culprits. Either the sensor's coil is failing and can't hold up under load, or the harness is dragging the signal down. We'll need to dig deeper before calling it.
Got you swapped over to the stand now. Let's see. Need to put this in ground. Alright, one end should be grounded. We'll go each pin to ground. 20.3. 21, and then we will check between the pin. If we had an issue, I believe it would be pretty low resistance. This is pretty high, 39.3K.
20K to ground and about 39K between the two. Leads means the harness is not shorted.
All right, well, guess I'm going to hit the I believe button and order a sensor. See if my good buddy was right. But while I've got the meter out and everything, let's see if we can figure out why my alternator isn't working, or if it's working. Let's fire it up and just get some readings real quick. All right, well, obviously it's not charging. Now, what's next?
Next step is to figure out if the alternator itself is bad or if the regulator isn't turning it on. Let's start by checking the field wire. If we feed power there and the alternator wakes up, the regulator's the culprit. If it still doesn't charge, then the alternator itself is toast.
This is another one that I don't know if it's any good or not. It was in the back of the old farm truck. But let's see, field. This one.
That's the one that tells the alternator to wake up. The regulator feeds 12 volts into this pin to energize the field coil inside. To test, we can bypass the regulator and give this pin 12 volts directly from the battery terminal on the alternator. If the alternator is good, you'll see voltage at the battery climb right away. If nothing changes, even with the field jumped, that alternator's not putting out.
Okay, so we got a little jumper on the field.
Perfect. Now the test is simple. Start the truck and watch the meter. With 12 volts fed straight into the field, a healthy alternator should kick in right away and the battery voltage should climb. If it doesn't move, then we know the alternator itself is the problem. That tells us the alternator itself is healthy. The problem isn't the alternator, it's the regulator not feeding the field coil. So the next step is tracking down whether the regulator's bad or if the wiring to it is the weak link.
I think we got a bad voltage regulator moving.
On these old Fords, the regulator is an external box mounted on the fender, not built into the alternator. The regulator has 4 terminals. I for ignition power, A for battery voltage, S for stator feedback, and F for the field coil. With the key on, engine off, A shows battery voltage. Terminal I also has battery voltage from the ignition switch. S usually stays low until the alternator spins, and F will often show some voltage as the regulator begins feeding the field.
Alright, I've already tried to film this once, so I'm just going to do it different. It's hooked up on the I terminal, the green conductor, and I'm getting 2.2 volts. All right, now I have it in terminal A, which is supposed to be battery voltage, and that is battery voltage.
Good.
Next. All right, I got it in the F terminal now, which is the field, and only got 10 volts.
You're just seeing the regulator's output floating with no current draw.
Plug the alternator in. It goes to 0 volts.
That's a red flag.
All right, we're gonna, I want to get one more reading with it running. I want to know what the field is with it plugged in. I haven't done that yet. So we're pretty much set up good enough to go fire it up, and then we'll get that measurement.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're not getting no voltage to the field. That pretty much proves the regulator flag, I think. That's that.
About ready to swap this thing out. The local auto shop had one available, so pop it in and heck, these things could have been just rusty. Look at that. Here's the replacement. This one's got something jingling in it. If they're the same. IASF. All looks the same. All right, put in. Alrighty then. Well, there you have it. I can't help but wonder, is there any changes? So, alright, that is on the I terminal. It's slightly higher, but not that high. Moving on. And here's the A terminal. It's about the same. I guess it should be battery voltage. Let's just see what battery voltage is real quick. It was. Does it match? Pretty much. Next. Alright, that's field voltage. And we are plugged in. So last time when we plugged in, we were at 0. So this is a good sign. Alright, I'm going to move everything, fire it up, and hopefully we're going to be charging. Here we go.
We're charging all right.
Nice. Here's some bonus footage because my curiosity. I want to know what is the England up in here. Might need a bigger drill bit. Where are we at? There we go. Oh, whole freaking, what is that? A component is off. Well, there you go, man. What's inside these things?
It's basically an electronic switch box that switches the field on and off to hold the system around 14 volts.
That looks important.
That's a wire wound resistor. It limits current into the alternator's field.
It smells burnt a little bit. And that's weird. It looks like it just come unsoldered. Where would it even have went? Makes me want to do a little more destruction in a way. How hard would it be to drill these out, you think? Just to keep looking. That's free. Here we go. Boom. This is what a voltage regulator looks like. There's where the doodad goes. And I wonder if I could solder that back in there and be back in business.
If the body isn't cracked and the value is stable, you can reflow the solder and put it back.
Looks like it got hot. That's interesting. That's gonna get my curiosities up. Of course, I done destroyed it, so there's no actually using this thing no more. But that's cool. Well, my Chinesium replacement came in. Looks right, but the first thing I noticed, not 1 inch. They must have used the metric. I don't think that really matters too much. That's 25 millimeters. But let's see what it does. Let's get it hooked up. Hopefully it's the same thread. Looks the same. O-ring is slightly smaller. This is a $17 Chinese version. Instead of buying the $80 Dorman. Alright, time to fire it up. See if we got a tachometer working. It's been sitting for several days. Going for it. Look at that. I got some tachometer action. Nice. Alright, let's take it for a test spin. Alright, let's see if it shifts through all the gears. Second. Third. Going up a hill. Look out, we got some turkeys. I'm gonna ride out to my little property. Just finished the test drive. Everything worked just fine. It shifted through all the gears. Tachometer works. Drove it about 3 or 4 miles and got the transmission warmed up and everything shifted just fine. So this right here though is weird, and that's one thing that's gonna be on the list. Why is it doing that? And I gotta do the water pump, so that's probably what's coming.
Big Red is back on the road, but the revival isn't finished yet. With a voltage gremlin in the dash and a water pump swap ahead, there's still plenty of work to do. Stay tuned. The journey continues.
See you next time.